this morning from the first epistle of John, God is love. And those who don't love cannot know God, but all who love know God. Fortunately, love is basic to our human nature, at least to some degree. We cannot survive the early weeks and months of our life without some amount of love. Of course, expressed in the food and shelter, but also in the experience of being loved. The sad experience in overcrowded orphanages has demonstrated all too clearly that we need affection and attention as well. Infants who were touched only to be fed and have their diapers changed wasted away, physically as well as emotionally. We all need from the beginning to be loved. And the more love we receive as young children, the more capable of love we become. And if we're lucky, we receive some of this unconditional love from our parents. And if we are not that lucky, we must receive it somewhere along the way, because it is by being loved that we learn to love. And as we grow up, we discover there are moments in our lives when it seems quite beyond our power to be loving toward others. If we are really lucky, we may find people who love us so much that they bear with us in these moments and love us anyway. Because it's in our experiences of human love that we get the hints that we need to even begin to understand God's amazing, relentless, limitless, unstoppable, eternal, transforming love. Jesus uses a human parent to illustrate this kind of loving in the familiar story of the prodigal son. You remember, the young man who demands his inheritance early, spends it in reckless living, ends up destitute, and decides to head home, hoping that his father will at least take him in as one of the hired hands. But the father, who has been watching and hoping for the return of his son, does not wait for the groveling apology his son has prepared. He is already on the move, running toward this wayward son with arms wide open in acceptance and welcome. And so we begin to understand a little bit of this love of God, always embracing, always welcoming, forgiving, ready to celebrate any halting, limping, unsure steps that we make toward love. This is the power of love. There's no experience more powerful than that transforming wonder of being loved when we least deserve it. It's powerful, but the power of love is different from other kinds of power. Power usually means the ability to make something happen. It's power over something or someone. Generals are more powerful than privates, not because of their ability to persuade, but because they have the authority to command. They have power over their subordinates. Bullies have power because they use force and intimidation not because of their winning personalities. But the power of love is different. It's relational. It's persuasive, not coercive. Love cannot force its will on anyone, or else it stops being love. Love often seems crushed by seemingly stronger forces, by violence, by selfishness, by greed, by domination. And that's the paradox of the cross. As the central symbol of our Christian faith, we look at it and can see defeat and victory. I reread recently Robert Messler's book, Process Theology, and there was a sentence that leaped off the page for me, a sentence about Jesus. They could not make him stop loving them. Of course this is true, but I had never heard it expressed quite like that. I've said things like, love cannot be defeated, but this was a very personal way of stating it, and it gripped me. They, the powerful, the violent, the dominant, they could not make Jesus stop loving them. Not even by nailing him to a cross, for even there, experience excruciating pain, total humiliation, and complete rejection. Jesus prayed, "Forgive them. They don't even know what they're doing." And so this is how we come to see Jesus' death as an incomparable expression of God's love. That Jesus had filled himself, opened himself so fully to God's love, he was filled with the fullness of God. They couldn't make him stop loving. No wonder Paul calls the crucifixion the wisdom and the power of God, because Jesus' death on the cross does show us the horrible, violent power of evil. But it also shows us its limits. Love is ultimately stronger. Stronger than death. Stronger than evil. They couldn't make Jesus stop loving them. That's the kind of power Ephesians is talking about. And let this love be our prayer this morning, that we experience God's love so fully that we, like Jesus, begin to be filled with it. So we too become a small incarnation of God's love in the world, with God's love flowing through us, in us, and then through us. We are created with the need to be loved and with the capacity to love, but it isn't automatic. Nothing compels us to love. It's a choice whether to allow God's love to saturate our hearts, heal our wounds, and be the guiding force in our lives. Some folks do choose coercion, domination, selfishness, violence, or manipulation, and we have all lived long enough to see where that leads. Jesus invites us to live as people of love in the world, to choose love as the way. So let us ask the God who is above all and through all and in all, to be in us in a special way this morning, to fill us that we might overflow with love into the world. Amen. Our hymn is in your hymnal number 498. Jesus, Jesus, fill us with your love.
grace that we owe each other in times both fair and ill, for the bounty of the land, for the good faith among all people, and for mercies great and small. For all these we offer thanks and gratitude, now and in future, in spirit and in action. Amen.
Before our benediction, may I please ask that if you have not yet met me in person, and especially if you're not wearing a name tag, would you introduce yourself to me, please? I would like to get to know all of you by name. It'll take me a while, but I'm working on it. And now may the God of love bless us and keep us. Shine goodness upon us. Give us peace. Give us strength to choose love today and every day. Amen. Amen. Let's form a circle for our closing song. All right, we'll figure out how to do it.
Well timed.